Well, I'm thrilled to be here. My name is Andrew Tisch, and I've been a great fan of the Technion for many years. It goes back generations in our family. In addition to that, I was at the time of the creation of Cornell Tech, a vice chairman of the board, and was very much engaged in the process that got us here today. So I want to welcome you to today's program. This morning we're spotlighting the Erwin and Joan Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute. I know it's a mouthful. It's a unique graduate school housed at the Cornell Tech campus right here on Roosevelt Island. Now, as a Cornell alumnus and someone who's been involved from the beginning, I just want to give you a little bit of insight into how we got to the promised land. Back in 2008, Mayor Michael Bloomberg, Deputy Mayor Bob Steele, and EDC head Seth Pinsky, who I believe is going to be here sometime today, were considering the future economic prospects for New York. Silicon Valley and San Francisco and Silicon Hill, I learned that term the other day, in Texas, were prime beneficiaries of tremendous development because of the companies that were around them, companies like Microsoft and Apple and Intel and Cisco and Oracle and so many others. This innovation seemed to emanate from the influence of universities that were around them, the universities like Stanford and Berkeley and MIT and the University of Texas at Austin and the UC colleges. So Mike and his leadership in New York City wanted to attract top tech, they wanted to attract a top tech university to create similar opportunities here. They launched a contest with the goal to build a tech campus in New York to diversify the city's economy so it wasn't just reliant on the financial services. They put out a bid for someone to create a high-tech campus. Actually, the expectation was that Stanford would win this contest. And if you ask me, I think the fix was in. But Cornell and Technion both thought that we should be the ones who put in the competitive and ultimately winning bid. So we worked together to create a new type of program to teach high tech. The result of the collaboration was a new institution that could ultimately transform the teaching of cutting-edge computing and data processing. It was to be a collaboration between two great universities. It was going to reimagine education for the future. As we say at Passover, Dayenu. That would have been enough. But on December 19, 2011, just 10 years ago, it was announced that Cornell and Technion would build this new graduate college to teach high tech right here on Roosevelt Island. Dayenu, Dayenu. Technion's partnership with Cornell has created the JacobsTechnion-Cornell Institute, this new model of entrepreneurial-based education designed around a set of industry-focused hubs which address specific needs of the social and economic needs. It's a cross-functional, multidisciplinary, and an academic institution highlighting Technion and Cornell's education and entrepreneurial strengths. Dayenu. It would have been an overstatement, it would not be an overstatement or hyperbole to say that what we've created has the potential to be one of the great academic institutions in the world. Now, we all know how long it takes to get anything done in academia. They move at glacial speed. But just imagine that everything that you see around here, every one of these buildings, every one of these programs, every one of these people, was done in 1/4 the time that it took the Jews to go from Giza to Gaza. So you can see how focused everybody was on getting this, this campus open and operating and doing great things. And you're going to hear about some of the great things that are being done here in just a little while. But I can only think of one phrase to define that. Dayenu, Dayenu. Now, this morning we're going to hear a little bit more about how we got to this promised land right here on Roosevelt Island. But first, let me introduce Professor Boaz Golani, who is the Executive Vice President and Director General of the Technion and a member of the JacobsInstitute Board of Directors. He's here to give his perspectives on the importance of the Jacob Institute, so please welcome Professor Boaz Golani.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a great honor and pleasure to address you all. And special thanks to Andrew Tisch for his ongoing support to this endeavor from day one. So I'm talking here from the perspective of someone who was a dean at the time that this initiative was born. Under the previous administration, a group of 6 deans was convened to put together the proposal for our collaboration with Cornell, and I was fortunate to be one of them. And the way it was presented to us was that this is an academic exercise. We have absolutely no chance to win it, so just go wild. Do whatever you think, and if you had to recreate a university of the future, just do it. So we went wild and we came up with all kinds of weird ideas, and some of them are here. And actually, I'm very proud that the 3 hubs that we have here were listed in a 4-hub program that we have submitted to Cornell at that time. So then the announcement came that Cornell and Technion won the game, and with it, we have seen 2 opposing developments. On one side, we saw huge enthusiasm and unlimited expectations. We are going to change New York. On the other side, we saw a lot of concerns and a lot of fears and questions. Why do we need it? How can it create some damage, etc., etc. There were fears that this will not rise, that maybe Cornell will not need us at some point, that there will be friction between universities, because bringing 2 universities to work together is not easy, believe me. We've seen other situations. Well, I'm happy to stand here and tell you that actually the results today have exceeded the best of our dreams and hopes. And it's much more than looking at the structures and the beautiful surroundings here. It's all about the true collaboration between the 2 universities, the fact that we meet often, that we have mutual respect, that we have mutual trust, that we work on programs together, that we are actually doing what universities are supposed to do. And these are basically just a few things. One of them is teaching. So we've seen joint courses being developed and taught by combined teams of professors from both Cornell Tech or Jacobs with the Technion. We've seen missions of students coming from Jacobs and Cornell Tech to the Technion pre-COVID, and now post-COVID they will resume again, and working together through Zoom during COVID, etc. We see joint projects. So the teaching environment has been enriched dramatically. In terms of research, thanks to supporters like Joshua Rush, I don't see him here, but maybe he's in the background someplace, and others, we were able to seed fund some projects here of joint collaboration, beautiful projects between Technion and colleagues here at Jacobs and Cornell Tech. Next comes the outreach and tech transfer and commercialization. So the Runway program that was established here at Jacobs has become a sort of a role model for other programs that we have looked at Technion, specifically our Drive Technological Accelerator that was run in the last couple of years by Shuli Schwartz, who was part of the team that ran Runway here. So the transfer of knowledge happened, and for real. But above all of it is really the opportunity for the Technion Israel Institute of Technology sitting in Haifa, Israel, to be part of, let's call it, the mainstream of academia, of the top academia in the US. The fact that we do share and compare on academic procedures, on how we evaluate candidates for faculty positions, on how we evaluate programs, etc., is a huge enrichment and a good experience both for us and for our colleagues at Cornell. Even on the financial side, and I'm sitting on the financial subcommittee of the board of the Jacobs Institute, I can tell you we had huge fears when the COVID erupted, because we could see how enrollment will drop, how the place might fall down financially for lack of support. Exactly the opposite. I'm happy to stand here and tell you that the financial situation of the organization is very solid, is very stable. We are actually going to meet the expectation of the break-even point in terms of income and expenses in the very near future. And it's really thanks to the great work that the team here has done under the leadership of Ronald Brachman, who is here, and others. So what's next? And I'm going to challenge a little bit the Dayenu statement of my colleague here, Andrew. A few years ago, I had the pleasure of accompanying the late President Shimon Peres on a trip overseas. And he was asked a question about defining a Jew, you know, the never-ending question of who is a Jew. We always ask this question in Israel, who is a Jew? So his answer was, a Jew is someone who is never satisfied. There's always something that can be done better. There's always something that you can achieve that you didn't achieve. There's always a reason for some self-criticism. This is a Jew. So we are Jewish, and therefore, when we look into the future, we want even more. We are not still at the Dayenu stage. And now we are standing at the end of the first 10-year phase of our contract with Cornell, and we are working with our colleagues to sign the extension. And both sides are looking for additional achievements, additional benefits to both of us in a real win-win spirit. And I'm sure this is what will happen. Finally, as the Technion is approaching its centennial anniversary in less than a couple of years, this piece of activity here is really part of being a mature university. The first century was all about growing up. We are no longer an infant university. We have grown up, and as a leading university, it's so important for us to have this presence here in New York, to make sure that what we do is relevant, not only to New York, the metropolitan area, but to the world. And this is really one of the greatest achievements and the importance of Jacobs for the Technion. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Boaz. And I'll just remind you that Dayenu is one of my least favorite Passover songs because it's a song that never ends. So, Dayenu, Dayenu, thank you. Let me now introduce Dr. Ronald Brockman, who is the director of the Joan and Irwin Jacobs Technion-Cornell Institute. I'm getting very good at saying that in one breath. And a professor of computer science at Cornell University. As the director, Ron is advancing collaboration between academia and industry, spinning off startups and helping to transform New York into a global tech center. Ron's going to introduce some of his stars who are making all this a reality, people who are tackling some of today's most pervasive issues and challenges in the urban and technology realms. Ron oversees all the Institute's activities and programs and developed an innovative new model for graduate education and training, which creates new leaders delving into deep science to challenge and change the world. Ron came to Cornell Tech after a successful career in research at institutions like Bell Labs and AT&T Labs and DARPA and Yahoo Labs. He earned his Bachelor of Science in Electrical Engineering from Princeton University and then went on to get both a Master's of Science and PhD degree in Applied Mathematics from Harvard. There he specialized on artificial intelligence with a focus on knowledge, representation, and reasoning. The focus paid off as Ron went on to become one of the world's renowned authorities on AI, authoring dozens of highly cited research papers, co-authoring a leading textbook, and creating an entirely new field called description logics. And Ron, you're going to have to explain that one to me at some point. His new book is Machines Like Us, Toward AI with Common Sense, which he co-authored with Hector Levesque, which comes out in May. And I checked, and I've already reserved my copy at Amazon, so hurry, because it's starting to catch on. Walter Isaacson, who we're going to be fortunate enough to hear from tonight, has said, "Be curious about all fields. The future belongs to those who can connect creativity to technology." Ron embodies this call to action as few others do. So to tell us more about what it means to be the University of Tomorrow and to introduce our superstars, please welcome Dr. Ronald Brockman.
Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. Thank you all for being here. We're very, very excited that you can join us for this event this morning. And welcome to our beautiful campus. Now, I know many of you have not been here before, so before we start our program, we thought we would show you a quick video, show you a little bit more about our history.
The founding mission of Cornell Tech was impact.
This is one of the boldest experiments in higher education.
Students who are at Cornell Tech can keep up with the pace of innovation.
We can use New York as a living laboratory.
Cornell Tech is unique because of the engagement with the city.
Our drive, our focus, our motivation is to help the community that surrounds us.
That has been wildly successful over the last 10 years, and we need to continue to innovate going forward in the next 10 years, the next 100 years.
Great. As Andrew and Boaz just mentioned, we're going to introduce some of our most amazing participants here at Cornell Tech and the Jacobs Institute. And what we thought we would do, instead of giving talks, lectures, PowerPoint, and the like, we'll just have a conversation. And I wanted to take advantage of the wisdom of our four colleagues here in terms of the history and accomplishments of the Jacobs Institute. At the very end, hopefully we'll have a little bit of time for questions from you to these amazing people. So keep in mind what you might like to ask, and we'll take a little bit of time before the coffee break. So let me now introduce my esteemed colleagues. First, on my immediate right is Professor Deborah Estrin. Deborah is a professor of computer science at Cornell. Of course, she's located here at Cornell Tech. She received her bachelor's degree from the University of California at Berkeley and master's and PhD degrees from MIT. She holds the Robert V. Tishman Founders Chair, serves as Cornell Tech's Associate Dean for Impact, and is also an affiliate faculty at Weill Cornell Medicine. Deborah's current projects are in digital health and public interest technology, and she has received numerous amazing awards. I'm certainly not going to tell you her list of accomplishments here, but among the highlights were the IEEE Internet Award, a Macarthur Fellowship. I'm sure you're all familiar with the Macarthur Fellowships, and the IEEE John von Neumann Medal that she won just very recently. Deborah is an elected member of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences, the National Academy of Engineering, and the National Academy of Medicine. She's also the founder of our Health Tech Hub, which we'll talk about more in a few moments. So, Deborah, thank you for being with us. Next to Deborah is Michael Samuelian. Michael's the founding director of the Jacobs Institute's Urban Tech Hub, our newest hub. He's an urban planner, real estate developer, visiting professor, and open space advocate. From community development in Lower Manhattan and the creation of a new neighborhood in Hudson Yards to the activation of Governor's Island, where he served as the president of the Trust for Governor's Island, Michael has helped plan, design, and develop some of the most transformative projects in New York City. Many of you have actually experienced them, although you probably weren't aware of Michael being behind the scenes. Michael received his Master of Architecture in Urban Design from Harvard and a Bachelor of Architecture from Cooper Union. He teaches extensively and has really helped us stand up the new Urban Tech Master's Degree program. And he's currently also an adjunct associate assistant professor at Cooper Union and a lecturer here. Michael is a fellow of the American Institute of Architects and the recent chair of the New York State Board of Architects. Michael, thank you for being with us. Next to Michael is Fernando Gómez-Baquero. Fernando holds a bachelor's degree in industrial engineering from Universidad de los Andes and his master's and PhD in nanoscale science and engineering from SUNY Albany. His areas of research include nanomaterials for energy storage, economic growth, and entrepreneurship. In that regard, we have him in exactly the right position here at Jacobs and Cornell Tech. He's had more than 20 years of experience building startups from academic technologies, and he's currently serving as the director of Runway and Spinouts at Jacobs, and you'll hear a lot more about that in a moment. Fernando's been responsible for an outstanding set of upgrades and improvements to our Runway program and has supervised the maturation of a large number of startups across all of Cornell Tech over the last few years, ranging from both our Runway postdocs to our master's startup studio companies. Fernando, welcome. And finally, we have Professor Wendy Ju. Wendy is an associate professor in the JacobsTechnion-Cornell Institute and is part of Cornell's Information Science Department. In addition, Wendy is one of our 6 faculty members in Jacobs with an appointment at the Technion. Wendy's been here at Cornell Tech with us since 2018, and looking at her background, she's regularly shuttled back and forth from the East to West Coast, receiving her bachelor's degree in mechanical engineering at Stanford, then a master's degree in media arts and sciences from MIT, then her PhD in design and mechanical engineering from Stanford, and now she's back with us in New York. Wendy's research focuses on human interaction with automated systems such as autonomous cars and robots. She runs human participant studies to gather design time data about how people will respond to novel system designs, very much part of the culture here at Cornell Tech. She has a major collaborative project with Technion industrial engineering professor Avi Parush to understand cultural differences in driving styles for the purposes of informing autonomous vehicle driving behavior. So Wendy, thank you for being with us. Okay, so now I'm going to sit down and make this a little bit more of an informal conversation. Again, thank you all for joining us today. Let's start with a little bit of history. First, I'll ask Deborah, who was one of the very first faculty members to join Cornell Tech. Can you say a little bit about the original educational goals for Jacobs, and were they any different than the broader education goals at Cornell Tech as a whole?
Certainly, and I know Boaz and probably some of the rest of you were there when the whole program was being designed. And I didn't do that. I was handed this great plan where there would be a 2-year Master's of Science that's a dual degree. Is that my fault? No. A dual degree, both from one degree from the Technion and one from Cornell. And with that slate of there being these 2-year MS degrees and having them hub-focused, all in the genius of the folks who wrote those that proposal, what we proceeded to do was build this program, which is inherently unique to Jacobs, that brings in a broader range of backgrounds in our students, and is cornerstones are a very deep technical program that benefits and is shared with the rest of the engineering master's programs at Cornell Tech, making the thing scalable. We have hub domain electives, so each hub is associated with a domain: connective media, health tech, urban tech, and so we bring in electives that help to bring in that contextual dimension to the students. And then very importantly, that technical background, they're taking machine learning, security, et cetera, is integrated with that domain background in the active learning work and projects that they do over the course of 2 years. And that's in the context of their specialization project, that is a 2-semester team project in the context of their hub domain, and a studio project of which they do, in their second year, they do a product development, and then they ultimately choose a form of a studio project. So technical core, domain context, and those things come together in integrated projects.
Great, thank you. One of the things our audience may not know is the Jacobs master's programs are 2-year programs. So to earn the 2 degrees, they are here for 2 years, which gives, especially those coming from overseas, an opportunity to do an internship in the summer between their 2 years. That's actually a significant attractor to some of our students. And as Boaz mentioned, Jacobs did fairly well through the main part of the COVID challenge. We really were concerned about a drop in enrollment and challenges sort of maintaining all of our activities. And I think largely because the programs are 2-year programs with that summer job possibility, we managed to sort of level things out and really do quite well with our applicants and enrolled students. Now, Deborah, I mentioned this a few moments ago. You were the person who started the Health Tech Hub here. Could you say a few words about the original vision and goals of the Hub, and a little bit about the master's program, which, as far as I can tell, you were the major driver behind?
Well, again, the original script, the original architecture it was called something else. I renamed it Health Tech. It had health in the title. And I started it, I had been working, I'm a technologist, I did internet stuff, and I had wandered into doing things related to digital health. And really, at that time already, and even more now, sort of every corner of the healthcare system was trying to look towards technology for ways to become more effective, more innovative, more accessible, and more affordable. Still a long way to go, at least in this country, in terms of our healthcare system being any of those things, but technology is helping. In order for technology to help, you need to understand technology, and you must understand things about the health system and the context in which you're trying to bring about solutions. So we built this 2-year master's program to help to grow students, to incubate students who have technical depth, learn about and respect the complexity of the health system, and have entrepreneurial skills. So that's what the Jacobs program at Cornell Tech provides across our hubs in the context of health. That importance of understanding and learning about the health system and what it means to try to innovate within it is really, really critical. And of course, the growth in digital interest in digital health has been tremendous over this decade in the United States, in Europe, and definitely in Israel. That growth is palpable. And very importantly, we have our Weill medical colleagues just across the estuary. So Cornell Medical School is the Weill Cornell Medical School, and those are the folks that come and suggest challenges, advise projects, and we have 2 faculty from there teaching our 2 cornerstone health-related campus courses on our campus. It used to be that we would send students over there when we had few students. Now we have critical mass. And the last thing I want to say is that it's not just our health tech students who do health-related projects and want to take health-related courses. Health has become such a driver for technology and commercialization and research that we have many students from connective media in particular who end up doing a lot of their work alongside the health tech students in the health and medical context.
Great. We'll talk in a moment about the Urban Tech Hub with Michael, but just one last question. Given that you've had the chance to sort of see a number of years of all the hubs actually, and our students graduating, getting jobs, the type of students we could admit, has the vision or implementation of the programs evolved much since the beginning?
So hopefully, as a good way, a segue to Michael, I must say that thanks to your and Morn Aman's leadership here, the programs have become more unified and coordinated. And I was somewhat skeptical because I saw I was fixated on the special things that I thought a health tech program needed. But you and Moore, and now Tanzim Chowdhury, who's the new director for the program, really have allowed the programs to be modular and complementary. The Jacobs students are not siloed in their individual hubs. They work together on those specialization projects, and they work together and even with other Cornell Tech students on their studio projects in their second year. And it's because the platform has this modularity, has sort of economy of scale. You build on courses that are taught in other parts, in other programs. That allows us to then spin up new hubs and get started while they're small, do it in an agile way, and have them grow.
Thank you. Our founders had this great vision of a lot of breadth around each of these areas. So you've heard the word hub mentioned several times here. Deborah is extremely familiar and was one of the founders of one of the master's programs within the Health Tech Hub. But in our view, there should be a lot more to a hub than just the master's degree program. Michael has joined us fairly recently as the founding director of the new Urban Tech Hub. And Michael, if you take a moment perhaps to let everyone know some of the thoughts about how our broader conception of a hub goes well beyond just a degree program.
Sure, thanks, Ron, and welcome everyone to Roosevelt Island. I'm always so thrilled to see this building activated and big groups of people coming together, especially in real life, because it's such a big component of what I think the mission of the campus is writ large, to really make us a center of thought and really a center of thinking that brings New Yorkers together in a unique way. And that's what I think is partially the mission of the Urban Tech Hub. We basically have a threefold mandate or mission as I see it. One is to basically build a new field of urban technology and really deepen the bench of tech talent in New York and homegrown talent with our students focused on cities and that intersection. As I say, urban technology is where computer science meets urban planning, and there's a lot of overlap there for those of us that have seen how our city can be improved with technology. So education is maybe first and foremost part of our mission being here at a university. But I think almost equally as important are the two other legs of the stool, so to speak. One is applied research, and we take research in I think a somewhat unique way, in that this is not necessarily foundational research, but it's how our research can make the city better, how it can optimize urban systems, how it can make the city more equitable, how we can bring more fairness to urban residents in a deep way with technology. And our research really runs the gamut from very futuristic, and we just published a 10-year horizon scan looking at the future of cities and technology and how each are changing one another. That was done by Anthony Townsend, our urbanist in residence, at the kind of wide end of the spectrum in terms of what the future is. And then on a more tactical level, we recently published a report called Rebooting Nyc, which is essentially a field guide or a handbook for our new mayoral administration that was published. We published a draft right before the mayoral primaries last May, and that has been extremely impactful, I would say, to the new administration. We heard stories where it was literally handed to the transition committee as you should do this in terms of some of our recommendations to how technology can make New York City specifically run better. And then we have a lot of other research projects in between those two extremes. And then lastly is ecosystem engagement, and being one of the things that being relatively new to Cornell Tech, how we make the campus more outward facing, how we engage both the tech ecosystem but urban tech ecosystem. And we've already hosted a bunch of events, an Urban Tech Summit in the fall, which is very tricky, as the organizers of this event know, to organize anything in person in the kind of COVID times, which keep changing. But we were thrilled to host an in-person event in November where we brought together a couple of hundred thinkers from academia, from industry, from government to talk about some of our research projects. And it was an incredible 3-day event. And we also recently hosted something called Open Data Week, which celebrates the 10-year anniversary of the Open Data Law. It's also turning 10 this year, and how open data is really empowering citizens to look at government data in a very transparent way. And then finally, last week we also hosted New York City Recovery Challenge, which shows how we're partnering, in that case, with Google for Startups and Tech NYC. We awarded 10 local startups $150,000, startups that were focused on building job creation for non-technical fields. So how technology actually enables job creation, not just for technologists, but for those folks that kind of suffer from the effects of COVID and where job creation has not outpaced the rest of us here in the city. So I'm thrilled to be here and kind of take this mission and really extend it further, because I think there's an incredible appetite for how we can make New York City and cities across the country and around the world better with technology.
Great, thank you. One of the concepts underlying here, and I think you'll hear it from all of our colleagues here, but you've already heard it in a way from Deborah and Michael, is leverage. As Andrew mentioned a few minutes ago, I spent some time working for DARPA in the Department of Defense, and a commonly used term there is force multiplier. And those of you who are aware know that Jacobs, and even Cornell Tech as a whole, we're small. We have overall on the whole campus roughly 40 faculty members, roughly 500 students, which is great compared to where we started a few years ago, but compared to larger campuses around, we're tiny. And we do ask an awful lot of our faculty and staff because there's so few of them. But as you can see, and the events that Michael just talked about are really great case studies. Michael, with a very small amount of help locally, partnered with other organizations around the city, but brought major events here to this campus. So we're continually bringing people, even New York City residents, longtime residents, many of them have never been to Roosevelt Island. As they see the campus and come and participate and meet with our faculty and students, it really enhances what we're doing, largely by leaning on the multiplicative effect of working with other organizations. Similarly, Deborah mentioned Weill Cornell Medicine. We partner with them. We've started some interesting partnerships with Cornell's Architecture, Art, and Planning School and other departments at Cornell. And we're even beginning to reach out to colleagues at the Technion. In about 2 weeks, we're taking roughly 30 students over to Haifa for a postponed, but hopefully in-person trip, what we call our iTrek. And part of that activity has been joint teams between Technion students and Cornell Tech students in a competition focused around healthcare. And as part of that activity is Rambam. So we're working in various ways to kind of leverage relationships outside of here. So all throughout this, you'll see that while we're small, I think we're trying to use our best advantage in terms of leveraging and multiplying through other people who are collaborating with us. So Michael, one other quick question for you. There's a way in which we were very fortunate through a very generous gift. We were able to start building the Urban Tech Hub much beyond the master's program. And you've been doing a lot of thinking, I know, about the vision of where the Urban Tech Hub might go, and hopefully that will be a role model for our other hubs as they grow as well. Can you give us a quick sense of where you see things going, say, over the next 5 years?
Sure. We launched this hub, as you said, as you mentioned, during the depth or height of COVID, however we look at it. I started at Cornell Tech in March of 2020, which, if you remember, was a tricky time to start a job. I joked with Ron and Greg, it was the longest onboarding anyone's ever had, about 1.5 years before I actually met anybody here on campus. But that did give us a good opportunity to think about our mission and vision and how this hub can really help kind of leverage the campus and really leverage our relationships with New York City. I mean, there's no better laboratory for urbanism than New York, as I see it. And there is no city that perhaps has some pretty intractable and tricky issues. So I see a real opportunity for us to leverage some of our relationships. And I've worked, as Ron said, in government and in the private sector, and I see us as a really critical bridge and connector. We do tend to go into silos, I think, naturally, whether you're in government or industry or academia. So how hubs can actually be bridge builders and connectors, to me, is probably first and foremost a critical component of how we can do our job better, to connect people in some of the public events or ways of connecting people. Some of the partnerships that I mentioned are other ways of connecting people. So one of the needs that I've seen, at least in terms of the government side of things, government, at least local government, has a lot of data, as we probably know. That in some cases, it's the proverbial drinking from a fire hose in terms of data. And, you know, government and public servants have a day job of running the city, whether it's the DOT or the Parks Department or the Department of Public Health. So they don't always have time to be thoughtful and really analyze their data. So I see a huge opportunity for us to be kind of a lab for government to actually work better and optimize how it delivers services. So, for example, we recently engaged with the New York City Parks Department to look at street tree data. So the Parks Department has all this data, 800,000 trees in New York City, and they have all this data about the trees, and yet they didn't know how to maintain them properly. So work that has taken them years to think about, we had a graduate student do in about 3 weeks of data analytics. So I think there's a great opportunity for us to create a lab where we can be a resource for government, because I think, I mean, this is maybe my public service bent, but I think if you solve government's problem, industry will quickly follow, because we're solving some of the really tricky issues that government is facing. And I think how we can help government deliver services better is a big component. So I would love to see us grow into a laboratory where we actually have data scientists on staff. I mean, I should say our hub has 2 employees and a lot of students, so we are not large. As you said, we do have some resources which really help us for sure in terms of sponsoring research projects for faculty and for others, but I would love to see us grow into a laboratory where we could actually take some of these tricky problems and solve them for government, for communities, for not-for-profit, and ultimately for industry as well.
Great, thank you. Now, turning to a slightly different topic, part of the original conception of Cornell Tech in the proposal to the city and through the partnership between Cornell and the Technion was entrepreneurship. You've heard a bit about this on our campus. A crucial part of entrepreneurship here is really centered within the Jacobs Institute in what we've called the Runway Startup Postdoc Program. As I've mentioned, Fernando is the leader of that program, and over the last few years has really grown it, improved it in some really dramatic ways. Fernando, if you would, can you give us a little bit of history of Runway and sort of explain how we got to where we are today?
Absolutely. So first off, it's great to see so many familiar faces and friends here. It's been a while, so it just makes me really happy to see people again over here. I started working with the Jacobs Institute 1 week before this campus opened. So I had the shortest onboarding of it all, because it was, here's your card, get out, we need to move to the new building. So that was a good experience. And when I came here, I came because of the idea of Runway. The idea was started by a professor called Uzi Dehan at the Technion, and he was looking at particular ways that universities do tech transfer. And the question is always, how do we make it better? How do we improve tech transfer? How do we do better commercialization of technologies? How do we increase the impact of what we're doing? And he recognized that there was a group of people that we were not helping out the right way. And he made a bold idea and basically said, let's run a weird experiment, as Boaz was saying. And the weird experiment is, can we give them an opportunity? These people were people that just graduated from their PhD. So imagine people that have been spending 5, 6, even 7 years. I've seen people do it 10 years, not recommended, but really all of these years spending thinking about new technologies, thinking about how to develop new things, how to solve really interesting problems. And then all of a sudden they kind of dropped. They said, well, either I go and I work something completely different, but a lot of them wanted to have that that help on building something new, or say, what if I can explore that entrepreneurship path, but I don't know how. And the experiment was, can we give them the opportunity to explore entrepreneurship full-time in an academic environment. And it seems weird that we hadn't done it. It seems like such an obvious idea at this point in time. But at that point in time, it was not. And the program was built with that idea. Let's just bring them, help them, give them the guidance, the mentoring, the resources, the curriculum. So teach them, educate them, so that they can have that as another experience in their career path. So they can then decide if they want to be entrepreneurs, or they want to be in academia, or they want to be in industry. But we should be teaching them more than what we taught them during those PhD years. And that's how the program started. Let's bring them here, give them the opportunity as a postdoc to focus full-time on building companies. And I think at that point in time, UCI was saying, well, we'll bring some entrepreneurs from the Technion, we'll bring some from Cornell, and let's see what happens. What has happened is that this has become now the way of creating commercialization from the academic environment. We recognized really early that by placing them in a position where we said, we trust in you, we are educating you, but you postdoc become the driver of innovation, the driver of commercialization. You as a person are the one that owns this, but we're here with you in this journey. Then all of a sudden they do great things, right? Because they have the capacity to do it, and they have the will, and they have that, that amazing drive. And they also have great communities. I truly think that one of the biggest components of the program has been the Israeli community, the Technion community, the Cornell community, that helps them drive and do more fundraising and make sure that they get the right teams and find the right people and continue in their journey of building companies. We started this program 8 years ago. So far, we have built 37 companies. Of those 37 companies from scratch, basically from people that came here with, I have a PhD and an idea. I kind of love that too. That it's as simple as that. You need to have a PhD and an idea, and that's how you get started. And those 37 companies right now have now built hundreds of jobs, raised over $150 million in addition to what we've given them, and now are worth over $500 million. So this has been a wonderful experience for us in just saying, can we experiment in something that we can give, something that we can teach them and help them out with just a group of people that was right here, that was already here with us. And it's wonderful to work with them every day because it's the challenge of building from scratch. What we see in the future, and maybe I'm getting a little bit ahead of myself, is for the 8 years that we've been doing this, we now recognize what's the methodology of what we can do, how can we do it better, and what we want to do is do it with more people, help more people, because that's really the objective of Runway, is help more people build those companies that create amazing services and products that help people like yourselves and like myself, by tackling those large problems. So in the future, what we want to do is not just do 5 every year like we've been building. We want to quadruple that. I know that Greg has been very passionate about that, and so I'm right behind there that we want to continue to increase the number of postdocs that we have here. But in addition to that, now we're asking also, why only postdocs? Why only people with PhDs? Right? Because we build a great methodology. And that's another part of it. Now we also want to expand it and say, why don't we give the same resources and mentoring and methodology to more people, whatever background they have, right? So how do we do that so that we can increase the amount of people that if they want to create entrepreneurship here, they can?
Great, thank you. One of the things that's interesting about incubators, and I guess in a way we would say that Runway is an incubator, is that the conventional ones are typically venture funded, and the main measure of success, the main thing that the originators care about is frankly making money. Now, of course, we wouldn't shy away from profits coming back to support all of our programs, but one of the interesting things about Runway, and I'd love to hear your perspective, is that our predecessors and our visiting committee on an ongoing basis are always talking about, well, what's the real goal here? And I think often the word that's used is impact rather than return on investment. Any thoughts about how to thread that needle, and is that, in your view, a viable basis for a sustainable incubator, or do we have to focus much more on making money?
Yeah, so we take a look at impact at our metrics. I think in a broader sense. On one hand, because I think we have many bosses, right? So we have the JacobsInstitute as a boss, but we have our community as well that wants to see what we're doing, EDC, the universities. So we need to take a look at all of the metrics that we can to take a look at impact. So how do we measure impact? If you're looking at it from the point of view of a city, what the city wants is jobs. So we want economic growth and jobs, and for these companies to continue to grow and hire people with good wages, good salaries. And so we track that. And as I was saying, our companies are located here. They're 95% are located in New York City, which means that they're creating jobs here. But they're also building operations in other places in the world, particularly in Tel Aviv and in Haifa. Because we have a lot of companies that are built by Israeli entrepreneurs. So they continue to create jobs. That's a big metric for us. As they grow, can they bring more jobs and good wages to other people? Then the other one is, can we obviously be self-sustainable financially? And that is important, right? That our companies, that this doesn't become just a black hole of money. That's not a good idea. And when we take a look at our portfolio of companies, what we want to know is that they are able to return that investment so that we can continue doing this. We have been doing this for 7 years. These are long programs. At this point in time, we've had some interesting sales of companies. This year, a Technion entrepreneur gave us a very good exit, so we're very happy about that. And if we take a look at the portfolio, we are positive, meaning that our portfolio is going to return the money that we have input so that we can continue to do this program. And then we also take a look at other metrics that are really key for us is in the companies that we're creating in these entrepreneurs, are we finding diversity? Are we being inclusive? Are we really thinking about people of color, gender, really trying to track that? We continue to work on that. That's still a big challenge in entrepreneurship. 30% of our entrepreneurs are women. Only 10% of them come from diverse backgrounds. So we need to improve that a lot. But that's another big metric that we have. So I think it's a combination of everything. We have the opportunity and the great challenge of not just thinking about money, which I do think it's important because self-sustainability is important, but we also have the challenge of thinking beyond that, how is it that we create more things that benefit our community and that create that reinforcing loop as well.
While it's challenging to define the word impact, and we might come back later to ask Deborah about her position as Associate Dean for Impact. In some ways, it's pretty liberating not to think only about making money. And I think all the people associated with Runway have been extremely imaginative in the kind of people they can bring into the program, and the kind of projects we take on, and the kind of outcomes we're looking for. So there's some ways in which Runway is really quite different than most other incubators. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, maybe one last thing there that I would say on impact is, remember how the experiment started. It did start by saying, can we help people that want to test out or want to figure out, can I be an entrepreneur? Can I have that experience? Can I live that experience? And living that experience, I can choose whether I want to be an entrepreneur or I want to go into academia or I want to go into industry. So in that sense, we always win, which is kind of a great way to be, because we are helping them. Even if they don't build a company, we are helping them decide, and we're giving them that opportunity. And that life experience is going to be there with them forever.
Great, thank you. Now, the reason we are all here today is because Cornell Tech was born out of a partnership. And we certainly don't want to forget the opportunities that we have here in New York to work with our colleagues in Israel in various ways. So I wanted to turn for a moment to Wendy. Wendy's does many, many amazing things. At some point, if you get a chance to visit her autonomous vehicle lab up in the Tata building, I highly recommend it. But I want to focus on one of the things that she's done perhaps better than anyone else on our campus, which is find innovative ways to collaborate with colleagues at the Technion. So Wendy, perhaps you could just comment generally on opportunities for people on our campus to unlock the value in the partnership.
Thanks so much, and I'm really pleased to be here. This is like, so flattering to be included on this stage with so many amazing people, and then to be before the American Technion Society as well. One of the things that's really important in my research is to think about what is commonly defined by engineers as human factors. It's a very small name for something that matters so much, but when we design technology, it's for people. And a lot of times when we train engineers, we don't actually call their attention to people and what are important things about designing for people. And I think that because as engineers, we think like, I'm a person, I know everything about people. We can often be blind to the things that matter. And so in my research, I see all the time, we'll play people back videos of their own actions, and they will be shocked to find out what they were doing, let alone what everyone else is doing, because of these blind spots that we have. So in my own research approach, I like to do things where people are constantly encountering people who are different than themselves, who come from different cultures, have different norms, because that helps them to think about all these important, sometimes we think about them as soft skills, but these are the really critical things, that make really good designs and technologies different from the ones that work but never really function in society. And so one of the things that I love about this relationship that Cornell Tech has with the Technion is we have this opportunity to have cultural exchange on a regular basis. So I have taken advantage of every single opportunity we have been given to do this. So one of the things that I got is as part of my startup package, I have some funding to travel specifically to the Technion, meet my colleagues there, talk to a lot of the other faculty there. And it was on my first trip to do this, and this was actually before my first school term even began at Cornell Tech. I actually met a lot of people, but among the people I met was Avi Parush, who was a faculty member in industrial engineering. Moore Naman actually set that up. And we were talking about the fact that we were both doing driving simulation studies. He was actually studying how emergency responders coordinate, like firefighters, people who are EMTs, like how they coordinate and how that coordination predicts more successful or less successful responses from people. And of course, I was doing simulator studies to look at how people take over from automation. And we started talking about something that we might do together. And that was followed up by a few different emails. And then we thought it would be really great if we could have an exchange where Avi could come here. So we applied for our Roosh exchange grant, and actually Avi came out here, and he met more of my students. And that was actually the basis of some early pilot experiments and things that led to this now NSF-funded project to look at cross-cultural differences in driving. This received such high scores that the program officer said, I want you to just propose to change this and propose to do 2/3 of what you asked here and take the last third and apply to get another grant to do just that. So it was it's very successful. And actually just by chance, Naomi Klein, who's actually Avi Parush's researcher, is actually here this week doing some collaborative research with us. We've also had an opportunity to bring some people from architecture and planning here on Roosh Exchange grants, and I actually got one really wonderful postdoc, Sharon Ayalon, from the early exchanges that happened doing that. Sharon actually helped to do a lot of setup for the urban tech. And then right now she's working on a project where we're using virtual reality technology to help people understand the level of water rise that we'll have in these floods that are definitely going to happen, in Roosevelt Island, and help people see that and use that for community engagement and discussion around climate change design. And then last but not least, I actually have been a really enthusiastic participant in this program where we actually bring Technion interns here for the summer. This has just been so wonderful. So we don't have undergraduates on this campus, so sometimes that's a thing that the graduate students miss out on, having undergraduate researchers to work with and mentor and collaborate with. And that has been something that has been really great for us to have undergraduate researchers from the Technion come for the summer. The first summer that I did this in 2019, we had 4 undergraduates, and I didn't understand that that was an unusual number. I didn't understand why people didn't just take the fullest advantage of that they could. And many of these students have gone on to grad school. But even if they didn't, I think just the fact that they understand what research is and they can think about what people from a different culture are like is really useful. And for my students, it was really great to see, you know, the things that they think were so obvious that weren't obvious to people who just come from another culture, speak the same language, but like look at things differently. And then just this last summer, we had two, even though we were remote, we had two interns that we were advising remotely, and one of them has been accepted to grad school. We have publications, and so that's a really amazing thing to happen in such a short time. So it's been really terrific, and I think it's been a huge part of my research at Cornell Tech.
Great. Again, I don't want to embarrass you, but Wendy is really our role model for taking advantage of the collaboration. And as we recruit new faculty members here, we try to get Wendy on the schedule for pretty much every single interview so that, I know she's way too busy, but just so people can understand the potential value in, again, this leverage point where we're small here, but we have lots of partners and opportunities to work with others, including our colleagues at the Technion. I should add one other thing that was kind of implicit in Wendy's comments. Not having undergraduates here, some of our faculty were initially skeptical of bringing Technion undergrads here for summer research projects. And I think we found in general, and maybe you can speak to this, Wendy, that even the undergrads that we bring over here are in some ways easily the equal of the master students that we're more familiar with on our campus. And they have been phenomenal to the point where people like Wendy are willing to take on 2, 3, 4 students at a time in the summer, and we're looking forward to doing that again. I assume that they've been completely up to snuff in terms of being great research colleagues and helping your projects.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think some of our PhD students are a little intimidated when they meet the Technion interns. They're like, they're very mature, they're very smart, and you know, I actually think it ups everyone's game to be in this environment where everyone feels a little bit competitive with one another. I do know that the Technion interns often have done military service before they started the undergraduate, so they can be more mature for that reason. But even some of the students we've had who have been in special programs where they didn't do that or they're doing their service later have been really wonderful. So I assume that the people we're getting are the best, you know, and not necessarily indicative of everyone, but I also have a very, you know, high estimation of the undergraduates based on my experience.
Yeah, it's been phenomenal. In fact, this past summer, Wendy even continued working and employing the students beyond the summertime to, I guess, complete some research papers. So that's great for the students. And of course, we would love to see many of them come over here and join us for graduate programs. We don't want to compete with the departments at the Technion, but if the Technion thinks of us as a kind of an extension campus, it all stays in the family when the students come here and join our programs. Now, I have lots of other interesting questions to ask our panelists, but I don't want to risk keeping you here all morning. And we did want to give you all a chance, if you had any questions, to raise them with the panelists. So if you would, let's take a few minutes and ask them. I don't know how we're going to work the microphone setup. Okay, we have a traveling mic. Okay, so let's start with this young lady over here on the right. Thank you.
Washington, thank you. I wish I were 20 again, and I wish I had science genes, because this is so exciting, but alas, neither. My question is, with all the, I'm sure you're inundated with student applicants for this wonderful Jacobs program. How do you make the selection? So the assumption is people are coming in with excellent science grades or undergraduate training. What are the characteristics you're looking for to select the small number of innovative students?
That's really a terrific question, and it varies a bit between the programs. In a moment, I'll ask Deborah, who's most knowledgeable, to maybe make a comment about health tech applicants. But one of the things that's key about our campus here is this is a very digital technology-focused campus. If you look at all of the master's programs, even the MBA program here has a technology focus, and in some ways we're fairly narrow compared to a broad full university. Given the challenging nature of some of our courses, it's very important that no matter the undergraduate major, our incoming students be well versed in at least programming, computer programming, linear algebra, probability and statistics, and that's sort of a general requirement across the board. But we're also interested in, especially in the Jacobs programs, given that they're 2 years, in admitting a much broader kind of population of undergraduates so that we can train people up on the technical parts and also have them come out with their domain specialized skills. Do you want to say a word about health tech?
No, what I want to say is you do have science genes. They were just suppressed by the surrounding society. Yes, yes, yes. And in fact, then I'll answer your question. Ron covered the basics of it, and not everybody who can be a very effective and high-impact technologist is thinking about when they're when they're 16 or 17 and applying to college and choosing their major. I had parents who were electrical engineers, and I required zero imagination to decide to do that. But most young women, even today, don't necessarily. And maybe what they go and do is sign up to do pre-med. Well, if you go into pre-med and decide somewhere along the way, I can do this, but I actually am not that interested in spending my days with patients. That's not me. What do you do with an undergraduate degree in biology? It's a great background, but it's usually a background for going on and doing other things. And one of the things you can do if you did bachelor's in biology, if you did pre-med, you can do linear algebra, probability statistics, and programming, and come to the JacobsInstitute Health Tech program and get more of that deep tech and get it applied in that domain, get the entrepreneurial, become a builder, and leave as a health technologist, and you have a lot that you can do with it.
One other quick comment, and then we'll go on to other questions. As you can tell from Michael's background, he comes with extraordinary expertise in urban planning and architecture, things that are not a major focus of this campus. But in the Urban Tech program, we would love to be able to bring in and have succeed people who do undergraduate degrees, for example, in urban planning or civil engineering. We do require sort of a baseline of this kind of more mathematical and computational understanding, but not huge depth, because we do have 2 years to work with the students. And Michael, I don't know if you want to make a comment. You've not only taught the core intro course for urban tech and seen how these students can do, but you've also employed them in work for the hub. Any comments about the breadth of students we're bringing in?
Yeah, it's been a delight. I mean, again, one of the benefits of having, as you pointed out very politely, resources is that we're able to hire our urban tech students. And we've hired probably a third of the cohort to work with us on projects, everything from independent research projects to working with the Parks Department, or we had one student who essentially ran this New York City Recovery Challenge that Fernando and I worked on, so even kind of project management experience. And they come, since many of them don't come straight from undergrad, some have great work experience and bring a lot of management experience to running projects, which I find incredibly helpful. But it's also a great way to build community. I mean, what I have really appreciated about these hubs is that while they're domain specific, there's also an opportunity for the hub to kind of foster a sense of community amongst our master's students as well. And the kind of networking opportunities of these events, which I'll I'll keep ringing that bell, that events are so important for community building. But also what I tell my students in my urban systems class that I teach, the network effect is so incredibly powerful, and especially in a city. We choose to live in New York City for the connectivity that we have to one another. So the opportunity to bring the outside world to campus, then connect the students to the outside world, I think is going to pay dividends for a very long time.
Great, thank you. Now, there's a gentleman in the back with a question. The mic is behind you, sorry.
Yeah, it was great to learn that the skills at Cornell Tech are being used for entrepreneurship, and that new companies were founded. However, among the various problems which the world faces today, there are some which have urgency, like renewable energy and climate change. And I was wondering whether you have any programs to that effect to solve this burning problem, and if so, maybe if you can tell us a few words about that.
Yeah. There we go. That's a great point. Look, we have been focused on as also your question here is getting the weirdest, more interesting ideas out there. So the weirder, the better, right? I love the things that you think that they don't mix, but they actually mix pretty well. So like architecture and computer science, civil engineering. And you're right, there's been a great focus right now on renewable energies, decarbonization, carbon dioxide reduction, and we want to play a role on that field. At this point in time, what we're looking at is we're being general in the ideas that are coming to us. We just want to make sure that we give an opportunity of all of these different ideas. But we are thinking right now as the next phase to build cohorts that are specific of those interesting challenges. So the challenge might be health technologies, and we will build a vertical on that. Another one could be renewable energy technologies, decarbonization, reduction of or carbon dioxide. So that's another big one. And we're looking for interesting sources of funding for that. So that's a big, we're looking for places where we can play a significant role and where we know that it's being underfunded, that other people are not looking at it, that is not necessarily a lot of money there, right? So if we can help people really early on that, then that'll be key. But I'll tell you another thing is we also don't shy away from changing when we need to change. There's a great example of a couple of entrepreneurs that we had here, Rebecca and Server, that they came here working on some medical technologies, but when COVID hit, they immediately flipped and said, we will find a solution for the testing problem. We will find a solution for a lot of the challenges that COVID hit. And they spend most of their time doing that. And we give them absolute freedom to go and tackle that challenge. So we won't be afraid of going and taking all of that brain power and putting it into those very pressing, urgent challenges, as well as bringing great brain power that is looking at larger types of challenges.
I'd also add just on the climate side, which I agree with you, there's no greater existential crisis that we all have than climate change, and it's not just an urban problem, it's a global problem. We just launched the program where we did a solicitation for Urban Tech Fellows. We were very, very fortunate. The principal author of our Rebooting NYC report, Rit Agarwal, left us recently to be the commissioner of the DEP here, Department of Environmental Protection, and New York City's chief climate officer. So we have a connection to New York City's view towards climate. But that inspired us to actually create a fellows program that is now going a little bit more granular in terms of domains. So each of these fellows will focus on mobility, infrastructure, or climate. And I think that there's a great opportunity for us to kind of lean into climate as something that the Urban Tech Hub can have a greater focus on.
I just wanted to add to that we've recently launched a public interest tech initiative here. And in fact, we're going to have a public interest tech postdoc now annually. We'll fund it with philanthropy that we receive to do this, to support a social entrepreneur as part of Fernando's cohort. And in some of these problems, the return on investment is not only does the Runway program allow you to germinate and grow and incubate that idea for when you do have traditional VC return on investment, but this public interest tech startup will allow for individuals to pursue ideas that don't have the same market and return on investment, but that are very important problems to address in an entrepreneurial way.
If I could add one other thing, kind of a meta comment here. You've heard some of it already, but let me be explicit about it. The group of experts we have here is really representative of how ambitious we are. We didn't talk about it in so many words, but each of these folks is involved in very exciting growth opportunities. So Deborah just mentioned public interest tech, or what we call PI tech. There's a whole story behind that, some new philanthropy that's come in, cross-pollination with Runway, and really exceptional growth, I think, for public sector and public interest support. Michael talked a little bit about his vision for 5 years for the Urban Tech Hub. We have grand dreams of being the go-to place for New York City for all things related to technology. And by the way, if you're interested in that Rebooting NYC report, please check our website. You can find it there. Fernando's engaged in a multi-dimensional growth plan for Runway. At the moment, we're still in the process of hiring a couple of people to help support that growth. And once we get them, that should take off, although we're always in need of funding. And we haven't even mentioned it here today, but Wendy is one of the leaders, among the few other things she's doing at the same time, in the creation of a brand new design and tech program for the campus broadly. Not Jacobs specific, but it will certainly intersect Jacobs. So what you can't see here is behind these folks, this massive interest in growth and impact across the board. And I certainly would invite you, if you have a chance to talk to any of them later, to see where they'd like to see things go along those lines. Let me see if we have one other question, and then we should wrap up and give you a chance to get coffee. Yes, sir. I'm not sure where the mic is. If you could hold on a moment.
Okay. Michael Miller from the New York chapter. We've all obviously been through a lot of changes in the last couple of years. We've seen growth in telemedicine, telework, all of those things. How much of the changes that we've done do you think will last and have impact in healthcare, urban tech, other areas? How will the COVID impact these things long term?
35%.
42.
Very specific.
Can I jump in? A lot of my research is in the transportation sector, and I think a lot of the things that we thought for sure we could never do, like that we could never have in terms of change, one thing that the pandemic showed us was that we could, And will we go back to the way that things were? I think in some ways, yes, because that is the easiest thing to return to. But on the other hand, I think everyone's imagination has been tickled. And so when we think about what we're going to be doing 5, 10, 15 years down the line, I think everyone's ideas about what is possible are a lot broader. So not to look for the sunny side of this really horrible pandemic, but I do think it points out how we've been taking for granted that we can't change people that much, or institutions, or the way that everything is built. And we're discovering that actually there are extra options that we didn't know were available. And I think even though we might not go back to those things, right away, I do think everyone, when we're thinking about how we architect the future, that's actually there.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your participation. Let me just run down the group. Any last closing remarks on Jacobs, Cornell Tech, the partnership? Anything that comes to mind that you didn't have a chance to say? And if not, that's fine.
Just one thing that I'm very keen on thinking about is defining problems. I mean, I think that technology, and being the non-technologist on the panel, is that technologists are good at building solutions, but I'm much more interested in having people help us define the problems. So please reach out to me, visit our website, or take my card afterwards. But I would love to just have a list of problems that we could begin to address. But problem finding to me is one of the biggest challenges, and what I'm most interested in for the hub to continue to expand.
So I'll add to that. Well, first, Michael, you do have the engineering gene, right? So yeah, please, you do. I'm always very grateful that I get to work with such amazing minds and entrepreneurs from all over the world, and particularly with these communities. I have done entrepreneurship without a community, and it's very tough. It's very lonely. It's very difficult to do. And I tell our entrepreneurs quite often that they're very spoiled, right? It's not everybody that gets a chance to build a company with this community, with these resources, with so many interesting things happening around them. So I want to thank you for giving them the opportunity to have this great community, for supporting them, because you do support them just by being part of that community and talking to them and throwing ideas and throwing problems at them. So I want to thank you for that, and all that I can say is every day, I can't believe they pay me to do this, so it's maybe not good to say, with my boss here, but it is such a wonderful thing every day to see the new things that they come up with, the new ideas, and all of them are about solving the biggest, toughest, most hard problems that we have out there. So it's a great moment to do entrepreneurship. It's a great moment to be part of this community. And I think if you want to be involved, you should definitely come talk to us. We want you to be more involved. We want you to get to know more of these entrepreneurs, and it's just going to be very, very exciting for the next, I don't know, 100+ years at least.
Great, thank you. I absolutely want to thank our panelists, Wendy, Fernando, Michael, Deborah. Thank you so much for being with us. I'm sure you'll all agree that we have an absolutely extraordinary set of colleagues who are making things go here at the Jacobs Institute. We're all very excited to be here. It's hard to top the sentiments that were just expressed. As you can tell, we continue to push the envelope. That was the original charter of the Jacobs Institute. We have grand ambitions. We're very appreciative of your support. And I guess to borrow from my colleagues from before, Dayenu, but as Boaz said, not really. So thank you all. Let's take a few moments to have a coffee break, and then we'll come back and join our president's panel. Thank you very much.